This is my second time recording, so hopefully it works out this time. Hello, my name's Oliver and I have OCD. I don't know when my OCD started exactly, but I know I've always been an anxious person. I've always been afraid to try new things. I've been afraid that my loved ones could walk out the door and I'd never see them again. I've always had a hard time making new friends, and my daily life has been routine when possible. So in my case, my OCD doesn't make me worry that my loved ones are gonna get hurt. It's a general sense of unease that just doesn't go away unless I perform a compulsion. The earliest case I can remember is an obsession with being liked. So I would research is one of my biggest compulsions. I would research how to get people to like me, and I would try and change my personality. I would research how to talk to people. I would analyze my own behavior and see what I could try and improve on. And at the time, it wasn't something that I recognized was odd. I just knew that I probably had an undeveloped social skills due to childhood neglect. But other than that, I never really thought about it. And I thought I was just being attention seeking, which I kind of was as well, but there was the whole obsession aspect to it, which, wasn't normal. A few years later, I had some genuine friends, but this intense need to be liked was still there, and I would obsess about whether I was being a good friend. I would ruminate over whether the content of our conversations was the criteria of what friends talked about, and I would question whether we spent enough time together, how exactly they felt towards me, and I would ask for reassurance that we were meeting these criteria, that we were being good friends. A few years later, I was kicked out my home when I was 16, and I moved into a homeless shelter. I had an episode of recognizable OCD. I cleaned the entire apartment in under a day. It wasn't a case that I was scared of germs, it was that I didn't feel safe because I was in an unfamiliar environment and I just had to clean in order to feel safe. I don't know how that works, but OCD for you. My roommate asked if I was alright, and I replied that this is just something I have to do. And although this was the only time I ever had a cleaning episode like that, I like to be neat and tidy, but it wasn't to the extent that it was that day. And that happens sometimes with OCD. You get cases where they just come and go, the obsessions and compulsions, and they just leave again in the blink of an eye. Sometimes it can be days, weeks, even just one time for a minute. It likes to change themes too, depending on what makes you anxious, and it likes to prey on what makes you most anxious. So it can literally be anything. I later on had an episode I like to call the Who Am I episode. I think this was near the end of high school, beginning of university, and I was basically having an identity crisis. I would take personality tests over and over to the point where I'd lose sleep over it because I just had to know my MBTI type and what my astrology birth chart meant on the day or whatever. If there's been a personality test, I have probably taken it 2 times or more. I would ask people for their opinions on my personality. I would repetitively write about myself and who I thought myself to be. I was basically seeking to be told I had this or that characteristic so that it could be over and done with. But personality is an abstract concept, so there's no definite answer, especially not from multiple sources. I would skip class sometimes because I'd been up all night taking personality tests and it was the only thing I could think about. I would ask my friends and people online to tell me what personality traits they thought I had. And after a few years, people got very annoyed, as one would expect. And I would analyse my friend's personality too. I would make them take the test as well. The thing about obsessions is that your mind is running on adrenaline. If you woke up in a cold sweat to an emergency alarm and you just had to go without really thinking about what you're doing, that in this case, even if you do think about what you're doing, you just can't stop. So the episode that had me seek help was the one where I was scared that a shop assistant was going to kill me. Just any shop assistant in general. And I told my friend about this because I was not leaving the house and I was absolutely terrified. So I told my friend, and they said I probably had an anxiety disorder, and I went to the doctor about it. And the year that followed was chock full of suicide attempts and bad reactions to a bunch of SSRIs. Because SSRIs are not always the go-to. You have to try things out and see which one works for you. And in my case, SSRIs were not the answer. So eventually I began having more typical OCD intrusive thoughts, like seeing myself stab myself. I would get phantom sensations in the area I saw in my mind, and it made my self-harm a lot more difficult to deal with. And it wasn't until I was hospitalised that I was sent to the community mental health team and I saw a psychiatrist. It took a few months, but then I was finally diagnosed with OCD. And it had taken 2 years between the shop assistant episode and now, or then, when I saw a psychiatrist to get that diagnosis. And naturally, I obsessed over that diagnosis. The week I got diagnosed, I spent more than 50 hours researching OCD. I was writing and rewriting my symptoms because I felt I didn't understand them well enough. I was rereading articles and retaking online tests because I was worried that the psychiatrist might be wrong. I was worried that I might have something else. And I was looking for a legitimate diagnosis, basically. I needed to feel like it was correct and feel like I wasn't lying. That episode was actually really recently, and it's lasted several months. Another episode I had this year was the homeless person episode, where I saw a homeless person and I freaked out when I saw someone else on the way home wearing a t-shirt with the logo guilty on it. Because I felt guilty for not helping the homeless person, and obviously that was a sign and karma was watching me. I'm not religious, but apparently karma is something I can get behind. More recently, there was a different homeless person sitting outside a shop, and I felt, again, guilty because I felt partially responsible for the fact that she was homeless, even though I'd never seen her before in my life. I started clicking my fingers and saying, I'm sorry, over and over. I was also concerned about karma again, and you know the saying, what goes around comes back around, and I was terrified that something was going to come back around. And again, well, just in general, OCD loves coming back up again and again with issues that you thought you'd already dealt with, and just shoving it up in your face once again. Right now, I'm on medication. I'm on Lamictal and Abilify, and I'm on the waiting list for CBT. My last attempt at CBT didn't go so well, but hopefully now that I've figured myself out a little bit more, it should be more successful this time around. So that's all for this video. If you have OCD, someone you know has OCD, feel free to share your story in the comment, and I'll definitely check you out. Well, check the comment out, not check you out. See ya.